The San Francisco 49ers never really have a quiet offseason, and this year feels no different. Trade speculation is swirling again. Familiar names are resurfacing, roster pillars are aging, and the front office is once again standing at a crossroads between immediate contention and long-term recalibration. For a franchise that has lived on the razor's edge of Super Bowl contention throughout the Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch era, every move now carries amplified weight. Let's begin with the defensive interior, because that's where one of the first subtle signals of change has already been sent. The decision not to place a tender on Khalil Davis is more than a procedural roster move. It's a message. Davis was always something of an athletic projection, but his physical profile never quite aligned with what new defensive coordinator Raheem Morris has historically preferred. Morris' draft history with both the Falcons and Rams shows a pattern. Explosive testers, strong arm length, twitchy movement skills, and interior disruptors who can threaten gaps with speed rather than just mass. Davis simply didn't check enough of those boxes. That leads directly into the larger defensive conversation. Could the 49ers make a splash? Reports indicate they are one of several teams in play for Max Crosby of the Las Vegas Raiders. If Crosby were to become realistically available for a package centered around picks and a player rather than multiple first-rounders, this would represent a seismic defensive addition. Pairing Crosby with Nick Bosa would immediately create the most feared edge duo in football. Offensive coordinators would have to slide protection constantly, leaving the interior vulnerable and second-level defenders freer to attack. The ripple effect on third-down efficiency alone could be dramatic. But here's the deeper layer. Trading for Crosby would signal that the 49ers are still firmly in all-in mode. It would suggest that Brock Purdy's window on a team-friendly structure is still being viewed as a competitive advantage to exploit aggressively. It would also mean sacrificing future flexibility, especially in a draft where the team has multiple needs. And that brings us to the NFL Combine fallout. The defensive tackle class is deep, and applying Raheem Morris' historical profile gives us clues. Athleticism matters. Arm length matters. Lateral quickness matters. Prospects like Caleb Banks fit the mold of disruptive interior pressure players who can collapse pockets and complement edge threats. Banks, in particular, flashes first-round talent when fully healthy. If the 49ers stay at pick 27 and opt for a defensive tackle, it would signal a belief in building pressure through waves rather than investing heavily in a blockbuster trade. Meanwhile, the offensive side of the ball feels like it's entering a period of transition. Wide receiver is suddenly a flashing red need. Brandon Ayuk appears headed out. Jawan Jennings' status looms. Ricky Pearsall is still developing. Speed has been lacking. Explosiveness has been inconsistent. That's why the name Bryce Lance suddenly becomes fascinating. John Lynch once joked about drafting Trey Lance's younger brother. Now that Bryce Lance has exploded onto the scene with a 4.34 40 and elite explosion metrics, it's no longer a joke scenario. At 6'3" and over 200 pounds, with a contested catch rate north of 66%, Bryce profiles as a classic X receiver. He wins vertically. He wins at the catch point. He brings a physicality the current room lacks. Yes, his production came at the FCS level. Yes, projection risk exists. But in terms of athletic upside and positional archetype, he fits exactly what this roster may need if Ayuk departs. At the same time, ESPN's post-combine mock draft has the 49ers selecting KC Concepcion in the first round. Concepcion offers suddenness, route nuance, and return value. He is explosive in short areas and confident in interviews. But there are questions about whether he projects as a true number one. In Shanahan's system, receivers must separate with precision and process quickly post-snap. Concepcion's skill set fits the scheme, yet using a first-round pick on a player with drop inconsistencies and projection questions would be a bold gamble. And this is where I want you to pause for a second. If you're serious about tracking every roster twist, every trade rumor, every draft scenario, make sure you're subscribed right now. This offseason could define the next 5 years of 49ers football, and you don't want to miss a single move. Now let's talk offensive line, because that may quietly be the most fragile unit on the roster. Trent Williams is nearing 38. The left guard spot has been unstable since Aaron Banks left. For different players rotated through in 2025, and the combined pressure numbers were troubling. Enter Joel Bitonio. The veteran guard has regressed from his all-pro peak, but even in decline, he represents stability. He rarely misses games. He understands zone concepts. He has prior familiarity with Shanahan from Cleveland. In a room desperate for reliability, Bitonio offers competence. However, signing Bitonio would create a ticking clock on the left side of the line. Both he and Williams would be deep into their 30s. That is a short-term solution, not a foundational one. That's why the mock selection of Northwestern tackle Caleb Tiernan is intriguing. At 6'8", with strong pass protection grades and 38 career starts at left tackle, Tiernan profiles as a developmental heir. Yet his shorter-than-average arms and smaller hands raise legitimate concerns about long-term edge protection at the NFL level. If he struggles against top-tier speed, the 49ers could find themselves searching again in 2 years. Then there's the quiet but telling news around the coaching staff. Cameron Clemens, currently assistant offensive line coach, is reportedly being eyed to replace Brian Fleury as tight ends coach. That matters because Shanahan's run scheme is married to tight end versatility. If Clemens brings offensive line perspective into that role, it could signal an even greater emphasis on integrated blocking concepts and heavier personnel groupings. The quarterback situation also hovers in the background. The trade market for Mac Jones has cooled significantly. That suggests league perception is stabilizing around him as a backup-level asset. For the 49ers, that could mean retaining him as insurance or accepting minimal return in a trade. In either case, it reinforces how dramatically Brock Purdy's rise reshaped this franchise's trajectory after the Trey Lance trade misstep. On special teams, the team re-signed 40-year-old long snapper John Weeks, ensuring continuity there. But kicker Eddie Pinheiro remains unsigned despite missing just one kick last season. Thomas Morstead's punting metrics were near the bottom of the league. Special teams may not generate headlines, but field position and reliability in close games matter deeply for a roster built on razor-thin playoff margins. Zooming out, what does all this tell us? It tells us the 49ers are balancing two timelines. One timeline says push aggressively. Trade for Max Crosby. Draft immediate contributors at receiver. Sign a veteran guard. Keep the Super Bowl window open while Bosa, Purdy, and Fred Warner are in their primes. The other timeline says recalibrate. Get younger along both lines. Add explosive skill talent through the draft. Avoid mortgaging future picks. Accept short-term volatility for long-term sustainability. Every rumor, every mock draft, every combine meeting fits into that tension. Pre-draft meetings with prospects like Memphis offensive tackle Travis Burke further emphasize that the front office is casting a wide net along the offensive line. Depth, succession planning, and competition are priorities. Shanahan has always valued linemen who can move laterally and operate in space. If Burke fits that mold, even as a mid-round target, it reinforces the philosophical commitment to zone integrity. Defensively, the pattern under Raheem Morris is becoming clear. Long arms, burst, quickness. If the 49ers target players who hit those percentile thresholds, we should not be surprised. The interior pass rush has to complement Bosa more effectively. That was evident late last season when protection schemes tilted heavily toward neutralizing the edge. And hovering over everything is the psychological scar of the Trey Lance trade. The willingness to move 3 first-round picks still shapes how the front office evaluates risk. Would they surrender major capital again for Crosby? Or has that lesson instilled greater caution? The answer to that question may define this offseason more than any single draft pick. One thing is certain. The 49ers are not standing still. They are evaluating every layer of the roster, from long snapper to potential all-pro trade target. They are considering athletic ceilings versus proven floors. They are weighing immediate contention against structural durability. If you've followed this franchise over the past 5 years, you know this is the moment where narratives shift. A single aggressive move can reignite championship momentum. A single miscalculation can accelerate decline. That's how thin the margin is in the NFL. So as rumors heat up, as combined numbers are dissected, and as draft boards crystallize, keep your eyes on the broader strategy. Is this team building for one more run or engineering sustained relevance? And if you want in-depth breakdowns every step of the way, hit that subscribe button and stay locked in. This offseason is going to shape the future of the San Francisco 49ers in ways we won't fully understand until the fall.